She's laughing, but she laughs at everything. Judy's okay. Join me in prayer. Dear God, thank you for this wonderful week, this wonderful day, this wonderful opportunity to remember what we find most buoying in this life. Amen. Well, you all know, I'm sure, that the remarkable human being and lover of Portland, Bill Walton, died a few days ago. He played 604 basketball games at UCLA and in the NBA in his 14-year career. 604 games. In a recent autobiography entitled Back from the Dead, he claimed that he had attended more than 869 concerts of the Grateful Dead. It wasn't like he was a fan, said Mickey Hart, one of the drummers of the band. He was part of our family. A Grateful Dead concert was more than a set of songs, Bill Walton once said. It was a gathering of the tribe and celebration, kind of like we are gathered here today. It was, he said, what I live for. He said those concerts put him in touch with something larger than himself. You know, that's what music at its best does. And of course, that's a subjective thing. Not everybody likes the Grateful Dead. But that's what I'm thinking about on this Music Sunday. I know of no proof for God. However, when I hear Bach's B minor Mass or Mozart's Requiem or Mahler's Second Symphony or the Adagio from his Fifth, I think to myself that I cannot imagine that all this beauty and sublime complexity is merely random or ultimately meaningless. No, I can't help but think that it points to something larger, a great sea of beauty out of which it comes and out of which we come too, and in which we go when we leave this world. Music, I think, is the ultimate thin place between the world of the spirit and the world we walk in here. You know, Mozart, speaking of the Requiem, said that he can conceive of an entire concerto in a veritable moment's time. The movements would just come to him like an attachment to an email already downloaded. Now, I can't fathom that, but if Mozart said it, I believe it. Hearing that kind of thing, you might believe he was a god, and some people do. The stage play turned into a movie. Amadeus took that idea on, presenting Mozart as a rather vulgar man who wrote heavenly melodies. Now, who can doubt that Mozart, however vulgar, was in touch with something deeply, deeply spiritual and sublime? Leanda Haupt has written a book in which she tells a remarkable story. I was just reading it recently. She says that on May the 27th, 1784, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart found his muse in a Vienna pet shop. We know the date because Mozart wrote down that event in his journal. There on that day, he came across a common European starling for sale in that shop. It caught his attention because it was singing an improvised version of a principal theme from the third movement of his Piano Concerto number 17. Mozart, of course, recognized the theme at once, but he also recognized that the bird had made several interesting changes in the music, which Mozart approved of and found enchanting. So sensing a kindred spirit, Mozart bought the starling, brought him home to be a family pet, and for 3 years, until the starling died, it lived with Mozart, influencing his work and serving as an honored companion, distraction, consolation, and as I said, his muse. How remarkable. I mean, in America, starlings are mostly reviled. Cities and towns pay good money to have them exterminated because they're a non-native species and they wreak havoc on other native bird populations. But they are crazy smart, and they are among the world's greatest imitators. How interesting that Amadeus found a soulmate in a species of bird considered common and insipid. It's a little like God choosing a desert hermit like John the Baptist, who only bathed when he baptized children and adults. The Southern Baptist Convention is going to talk about this church when they gather this summer. They're going to say those Presbyterians, they don't even put water in their font. But music is the world's greatest elevator. I mean, it elevates our spirits. If you love music, it's what happens, inevitably. It also informs and transforms our hearts. Let me close with these short remarks, because this is just a word among music today. Written by an anonymous woman from San Francisco who like the great composer's Starling, we might just miss this woman, pass her over, but she had a very close, life-changing encounter with one work of Wolfgang Mozart's. See if you can relate. She writes this. This is in her word. When Mr. Harvey, our high school music teacher, chose me to play the solo in the orchestra's performance of Mozart's Violin Concerto No. 3 in G major, I felt like I had finally become someone. At the time, I had few friends and a sagging load of depression. The concerto became my reason to live. I practiced several hours a day for months until I'd perfected every note. My beloved violin teacher, Mrs. Van Valkenburg, did everything she could to prepare me for this, including showing me how to bow to the audience and to the conductor. On the day of the concert, I wore a new dress I'd purchased on a special trip into the city with my mother and sisters. I was excited, but mostly scared. I stepped onto the stage, bowed to the blur of faces in the audience, and put my violin to my chin. Mr. Harvey raised his baton, and the orchestra commenced. My notes were perfect, just like I had practiced. I sank into each movement as my fingers did what I had trained them to do. But then came the cadenza from the last movement. Mrs. Van Valkenburg and I had worked on this part repeatedly, and I'd often felt the beauty of Mozart's composition as I played it in her studio. The orchestra was silent as I began the solo passage. After several bars, something happened. Blankness invaded my mind, turning it into an empty space that housed no notes, no music. My violin transformed into a simple piece of wood. I could not remember what I was supposed to play. I looked at Mr. Harvey pleadingly, and he mouthed words I couldn't understand. I wanted to bolt from the stage, but something told me to stay put. I closed my eyes and moved my bow along the strings, inventing a line of music, kind of like the Starling. The notes were wrong, but they led me back to the right ones in the final bars of the cadenza. When the orchestra came back in, and at the end of the piece, the audience applauded, and I walked off the stage. It has been decades since I played the violin. I have fibromyalgia and cannot play even a scale without a flare-up. I'm still depressed. I still have no friends, job, or partner to bring me joy. When the limitations of my life threaten to overwhelm me, I remember that moment on stage 40 years ago when I produced something from the edges of my imagination and pulled myself out of the abyss. Amen.